Let's dig a bit deeper now. Robert Fife is the Ottawa Bureau Chief for the Globe and Mail, Tonda MacCharles, the Ottawa Bureau Chief for the Toronto Star, Joël-Denis Bellavance, the Ottawa Bureau Chief for La Presse. Welcome back to the three of you.
Hey there.
Hello, Michael.
So, I got to start with the change in tone, which is quite striking. The very fact that we heard Donald Trump being very conciliatory, did not refer to Mark Carney as the Governor of Canada, referred to him as the Prime Minister, talked about a bright future for both the United States and this country. Bob, what do you make of that change in tone? What do you think has led to this?
Well, look, I think it's remarkable. I mean, I was really surprised to have the President come out with really such a positive and respectful tone to his message, that he wants to talk to Canada. He's very highly respectful, and let's get negotiations going. Let's see if we can bring about prosperity basically in both countries. That is a completely different tone than the way he treated Justin Trudeau, who we know he never liked. You know, he belittled him, talked to him as the governor of the 51st state and all that sort of stuff. So I don't know what went on behind the scenes. I wonder if Mr. Carney has great connections with some of the most powerful U.S. leaders in the United States, and I wouldn't be in the business community. I wouldn't be surprised if he's talked to some of them, and they may have talked to the president. Obviously, the president knows that Mr. Carney is a very serious guy. You know, the central banker in Canada and in the UK. So maybe that had an impact as well. I would love to have been in that room to have heard that conversation. Now, we all know with Donald Trump, tomorrow he could be saying something different.
Yeah.
But this is the first time that we've seen something really positive from the president since before his election, frankly. And it's got to be great worrisome to Pierre Poilievre, the Conservative leader, because you know, if this conversation continues the way it's going, it's all over for Mr. Poilievre.
Okay, well, we'll pick up on that point in a second. But interestingly, even though this positivity comes out of this phone call, it's not an elbows down situation quite yet. At the same time, though.
No, in fact, if anything, we heard from Mr. Carney a very clear consciousness that in a negotiation, everybody's got a strategy, and coming into what Carney's setting out is going to be a negotiation. He's wary of Trump's warm tone today and sees it for what it is, and he's reiterating the message that Canada has to reduce its reliance on the U.S., not further integrate, which is a contrast, actually, to a certain extent with the message we're hearing from the Conservative leader, who on the campaign trail is still saying there is still a chance for greater integration. Let's, when my government gets in, we'll expedite energy projects and whatnot. And if we can't negotiate with the U.S., then we'll go our own way. So there's a slight contrast there. Just to Bob's point, though, I think that the other factor weighing in a change of Trump's tone today might be these stunning indicators we're seeing in the U.S. economically, that his tariff war is rattling everybody there. And, consumer confidence right now is plummeting in the U.S. What does that mean? People will stop spending. What does that mean? Not just inflation, but actual fear, people keeping their money in their pockets, not spending. So those are big economic challenges for Trump, and I bet they're playing into.
Yeah, absolutely. Joe-Denis?
That's the R recession that you're mentioning. Recession, maybe. I would go also, I would add another angle. Since Mr. Carney was elected leader of the Liberal Party and became Prime Minister, he worked to establish a rapport de force with Mr. Trump. First trip, he went to Paris, London, and then equally with where he announced that we were buying a satellite from Australia and not the United States. He also said that we may not buy more planes from the United States, the F-35. We may look to Sweden to build the military we need. And he mentioned also building corridor. And he said, I'm not going to speak to Mr. Trump until he shows respect to our sovereignty. So he drew a line, in my sense, in the sand, and Mr. Trump got the message quite clearly. Will it last, as Bob mentioned? I don't know, because Mr. Trump is very unpredictable. But I think today we can see that it was a good day for Mr. Carney.
And one of the things,
next week is the big.
I was just going to say next week, and he made it clear that April 2nd, he expects there are going to be tariffs, and we are going to respond with tariffs.
Yeah, well, and absolutely, you got to circle that date. But it has me wondering, because you were talking about it a bit beforehand, Bob. You know, you listen to the pollsters, and they say without Donald Trump, we wouldn't be seeing Mark Carney in the position that he is right now in the polls. And then you have this phone call, a far more positive tone than it was, you know, just even a week ago. Bob, has Donald Trump kind of inadvertently underlined the Liberal campaign for Mark Carney and given the party the message to carry through the rest of this campaign?
I think the message from the president today is a huge boost to the Liberal campaign. Everybody in this country is frightened about these tariffs, the job losses, a likely recession. Not to say that's not going to happen, but the fact of the matter is the president is saying, I can deal with this guy. I want to deal with him seriously. We're going to have comprehensive negotiations, both economically but on the defense sphere, after the election. That gives Mr. Carney the ability to go to the Canadian people and say, I need a big majority government to deal with this president. And you know what we've seen with Mr. Poilievre, he's been floundering all over. You know, this week, Corey Tonight, the Premier Ford's campaign manager, is saying, you know,
another conservative for people not in the know.
Another conservative saying, you know, you guys are talking about, you know, World Economic Forum and defunding CBC and Century initiatives and all this sort of stuff. The focus here is not carbon tax and all that. It's about Donald Trump, and he really isn't even talking about it.
Well, yeah. In fact, today he was talking about the criminals that should spend, you know, a life term in jail.
Right.
So.
I mean, he's missing the whole election campaign here by doing this.
What do you think, Tonda? You know, given that the opposition is trying to find a message that almost differs from Donald Trump, where does this leave the campaign right now?
Well, I think that they're trying to adjust and struggling to adjust, right? They got a pretty big splash of cold water over their heads with Corey Tonight and the Ontario Conservative message to them that they're losing in Ontario. The internal polling that was revealed in our paper, you know, showing that they're well behind and that they're behind the 8 ball to catch up now, right? Next week will be dominated by Trump, the tariffs, the messaging. And today we saw Mr. Poilievre talking about crime in front of an ocean backdrop in Nanaimo in the rain. And I'm not really sure what they wanted voters, who Mr. Harper actually sort of perfected the art of, even if you were not listening, you should be able to see on your screens what the message of the day is. And I'm not sure what the message today was. Like, we're underwater? What's the message?
Yeah, well, I won't comment on that last bit. So go ahead, Joël-Denis.
Well, it's true that the Conservatives have had trouble adapting to the fast pace of this campaign and the events that is coming from outside the borders. And Mr. Carney, as being Prime Minister since March the 14th, has an advantage over that because he's the one who can call the shots for Canada, for the government. So more cameras are on him than on the official opposition. We always said that the job of official opposition is the toughest job in politics in Canada. And that is revealing today in this campaign. But clearly, I'm told that next week the Conservative will try to pivot and be in Oshawa the day that the tariffs will be announced, so they can react more forcefully. So they're trying to adjust, but they're a bit late to the game.
They should have been in Oshawa yesterday.
Exactly.
Or today. I mean, you know, not to make too much of the visual symbols, but they're telling us a story. Mr. Carney's in front of the container port in Montreal. You see the messages linked to trade. He's staked his ground on that. Mr. Poilievre's platform thus far on Canada First and what he will do in the face of the tariffs has been somewhat retrospective to his promises up to now about diversifying the Canadian economy and promoting and advancing energy. But when it comes to sort of the actual moment and the new stuff he's rolled out in this campaign, it's been sort of a few messages related to the North, right? To the defense of the North, more Rangers, a new defense base up there. But I don't know that we've seen a comprehensive approach to the trade question. He talks about dollar for dollar tariffs. Well, you know, exactly what and on how much, and where does he disagree with the current strategy of the current government? We don't have that kind of detail, and so I think people are looking at and trying to weigh it. Well, what's your offer?
Yeah, although, you know, I hear what you're saying, but I'm quickly running out of time, but I do want to ask, because we're talking about this moment because of the Donald Trump phone call that Mark Carney had today. But, you know, before Donald Trump went out Wednesday and basically unveiled what the auto tariff was going to look like for the world, you know, Mark Carney was having a couple of bad days. One
Oh,
of
he
which,
sure was.
yeah, one of which was also, calling a Liberal candidate, Nathalie Provost, the wrong name, and saying the massacre, that happened was at Concordia, not at l'École Polytechnique. Joël-Denis, what resonance is that story going to have and affect the Quebec vote? Because that's going to be very important for the Liberals.
It will be important for Quebec, and right now the Liberal Party is very much ahead of everybody in Quebec, and that's not seen even when Mr. Trudeau was Liberal leader. So it's phenomenal what's happening in Quebec, and I guess it goes to Bob's point that people are frightened about losing their jobs, and I think they're going to give Mr. Carney somewhat of a pass over those mistakes. And if I may say about Mr. Carney's French, I would say that it's comparable to what the level of French that Mr. Stephen Harper had in 2006 and 2005 when he was elected Prime Minister. So it's not deficient, not at all. It's, he can explain, and we've seen it today again during the press conference, very, quite eloquent in French, saying again a phrase that I like, maître chez nous, master in our own home, and I think that resonates a lot in Quebec as well.
Yeah, historically, of course. Bob, what do you say about the next little while for Mr. Carney? Because I hear what you're saying about, he's got a strong message, but it depends on how well he delivers that message for the next few weeks.
Well, look, I think he won this week, and he's probably going to win next week because the focus is going to be on those tariffs that are going to come down. And he gets to be the Prime Minister, and he gets to respond. He gets to put tariffs in place. That's going to be hard for Mr. Poilievre to get any oxygen. So Mr. Poilievre, right now, he's losing this election campaign. He's got to count on the debates to see if he can pull himself back into the race.
Okay. Tonda?
You stole a line. That's exactly what I found this week. He sucked the political oxygen out of the room, right? And no, I think that next week all eyes will be focused not just on Trump, but very specifically on what the other offers from the other parties are. After that, look, then we're into debate week, and then it's the home stretch. Yeah. So this thing is moving at light speed, and I'm not sensing that the opposition parties have yet caught up to it.
Well, certainly the polling numbers show where we are headed at this point. If in an election we're headed today, Mr. Carney and the Liberals would be very happy. We'll see what holds in the next few weeks. Bob, Tonda, Joël-Denis, always appreciate the time. Thank you very much.
Have a good weekend.
You too.